Good
Good day, panelists. I am Amiela Joy Fernandez.
I'm Regine Caampued.
And I'm Nelson Carretero.
And we are the student researchers from third year Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Mathematics. Our research is entitled The Efficacy of Learning Platforms Used for Modes of Assessment Among the Third Year Bachelor of Secondary Education students.
And now, we are going to answer the 10 questions for our virtual defense.
The first one is, why did we select that particular title? So we, the researchers, believe that our research title is related in subject matter of our research problem, which is to examine the degree of efficacy of learning platforms used for modes of assessment.
We also select this particular title because we believe that it is timely, because as of now, we are having online classes and learning platforms are used to assess the students' learning.
Also, it is specifically for third year Bachelor of Secondary Education students of Asbury College Incorporated. That's why our formulated research title is The Efficacy of Learning Platform Used for Modes of Assessment among the third year Bachelor of Secondary Education students.
So, next, number 2, our considerations in choosing the title of our study. The first thing that we consider in choosing the title of our study is that it must be interesting to the reader, particularly to the students and faculty of Asbury College.
The next one is, it must predict the content of the research. Upon reading the title, which is The Efficacy of Learning Platforms Used for Modes of Assessment among the third year Bachelor of Secondary Education students, the readers must know that it is for the third year and the study is about the degree of efficacy of learning platforms used for modes of assessment.
Lastly, it must contain important keywords that are related to the study. In our title, the important keywords there are the efficacy, learning platform, and modes of assessment. When we say efficacy, it is about effectiveness. When we say learning platforms, there are the tools for students to learn and experience educational theory and practices, technology and content. Lastly, when we say modes of assessment, these are assessment referring to pre-assessment, formative assessment, and summative assessment. The benefits of our study to our respondents. First, the outcome of this study will help the respondents to realize the best learning platform they can use for each of the modes of assessment, specifically formative assessment and summative assessment.
This study will also bring awareness to the respondents about how effective are the learning platforms used for modes of assessment.
And lastly, this study will help the respondents to know the importance of every learning platforms that we use in modes of assessment.
Number 4, summary of the background of the study. To continue learning despite the threat of present pandemic COVID-19, Asbury College Incorporated College Department conducts online classes for the academic year 2020 to 2021 in order to avoid the face-to-face contact and mass gathering in school. College students who are currently enrolled in aforementioned school attends virtual classes and take online assessment, specifically the third year Bachelor of Secondary Education students use online application used as learning platforms. So these platforms include Google Classroom, Google Form, Facebook Messenger, Kahoot, and Quizzes.
Upon using the learning platforms mentioned by Nelson, there are some problems encountered by the students, and these problems will be discussed in this study.
And lastly, we the researchers attempt to to explore the efficacy of learning platforms used for modes of assessment among the third year Bachelor of Secondary Education students. We try to assess the degree of efficacy of learning platforms in terms of accessibility, accuracy, credibility, and reliability. And at the end of this research, recommendation of effective learning platforms to be used as mode of assessment were laid.
Number 5, primary purpose of our study is to determine the efficacy of learning platforms used for modes of assessments among the third year Bachelor of Secondary Education students.
So, we the researchers determined the efficacy of learning platforms in terms of accuracy, credibility, accessibility, and reliability. And the modes of assessment that we are referring to is the pre-assessment, formative assessment, and summative assessment. And the focus of this study is on the third year Bachelor of Secondary Education students.
So number 6, our statement of the problem. The study focused on the efficacy of learning platform used for modes of assessment among the third year Bachelor of Secondary Education students. Specifically, it aims to answer the following questions. So, what is the respondent's demographical profile in terms of gender? Gender answerable by either male or female. B, or internet connectivity. Do the respondents have a maximum excellent, reliable, slow, and bad connection strength? Then, family income. Family income at the respondent family income ranges from 5,000 to 9,999, 10,000 to 19,999, then 20,000 to 49,999, and 50,000 and above. For the academic status determined by general weighted average, excellent, very good, good, fair, pass, and fail.
Our statement of the problem: what is learning platforms do students prefer to use for modes of assessment? In answering quizzes, formative assessment, group activities, assignment, and individual activities.
So in number 3, what are the problems encountered by the students or student respondents while using the learning platforms for modes of assessment? So the choices there are the following: server down, late submission of tasks due to poor internet connection, re-answering of exams, then can view nor download files, limited data to upload and download, too much gamification, no systematic repetition of lesson mastery, application bugs, wrong assessment result, and learning application size.
Number 4, what is the degree of efficacy of learning platforms in terms of accessibility, accuracy, credibility, and reliability?
Number 5, is there a significant relationship between the respondent's profile and the problems encountered while using learning platforms as mode of assessments?
Then number 6, is there a significant difference between the degree of efficacy of learning platforms?
Number 7, is there a significant relationship between the degree of efficacy of the learning platforms and the problem encountered by the respondents?
Number 8, what learning platforms can be recommended and offered by the researchers?
So number 7 is our research design.
A quantitative approach in a form of descriptive survey design will be used. This research method enables enables researchers to study the subject on their natural setting and how they have responded to the phenomena.
A descriptive survey is selected due to its provision of an accurate portrayal of the characteristics, for instance, the participants' behavior, opinions, abilities, belief, and knowledge of particular situation. In this case, it is their response to our digital learning platform's effectiveness. This design is chosen to meet the objectives of the study, namely to determine the knowledge and views of the students in the accessibility, credibility, accuracy, and reliability of learning platforms used as mode of assessment.
So next is our statistical tool used per SOP. So the profile of third-year Bachelor of Secondary Education students in terms of gender, internet connectivity, family income, and academic status were described using frequency counts and percentage. So frequency counts and percentage was also used to describe the preferred learning platforms used as mode of assessment. Weighted mean and descriptive rank was used to determine the problems encountered by the respondents while using the learning platform. And the degree of learning platforms in terms of accessibility, accuracy, credibility, and reliability based on their answers in 5-point Likert type of scale. In problems encountered by the respondents while using the learning platforms, the researchers' corresponding point about or assigned, which was used to measure the student's answer, is as follows. So we have the scale of 5 for the descriptive equivalent of always, 4 for often, 3 for sometimes, 2 for seldom, and 1 for never. And lastly, on degree of efficacy of learning platforms in terms of accessibility, accuracy, credibility, and reliability, the following is the researcher's corresponding point assigned, which was used to measure the student's answer. So we have the scale of 5 for highly effective, 4 for very effective, 3 for effective, 2 for moderately effective, and 1 for less effective. The next, we will show the results of our study for every statement of the problem. So here, we have the SOP 1A, which is the respondent's gender profile. So as you can see, there are majority of male than female because we have 68% of male and only 32% of female.
So SOP number 1B, respondent's internet connection strength. Representation of the respondent profile regarding their internet connection strength. The graph shows that 13 of them have an excellent internet connection strength, which made up of 30% of the total population. There are 16 respondents who are a reliable internet connection strength, which made up of 36% of the total population. Lastly, there are 15 respondents who have slow internet connection strength, which made up the 34% of the total population. Majority of them experience reliable internet connection strength. It validates the study of LICO 2020. In the review of related literature number 2A, paragraph 4, page 28, 57% of Filipino households or 12.2 million families are still not connected to the internet, while those who have access and experience slow download speeds. The average mobile broadband download speed in the country is only 16.76 megabytes per second, well below the global average of 32.01 Mbps.
'Mbps. 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 '
Next is OP 1.C, Respondents' Family Income. SOP 1.C shows the respondents' profile regarding their family income. Majority of them have 5,000 pesos to 9,999 pesos family income, which consists of 34 respondents and made up 77% of the total population. 16% of the total population have 10,000 to 19,000 family income, that consists of 7 respondents. There are 2 respondents have 20,000 to 49,999 family income and 1 respondent with a family income of 50,000 and above. In support to this, according to Philippine Statistics Authority, year 2013, the families in the poorest decile earned an average annual income of 69,000 pesos or about 6,000 pesos monthly.
So, the next one is the respondent's academic status. So, SOP 1B shows that most of the respondents have a general weighted average of 1.75, which made up the 52% of the total population. And 10 respondents have 2.5 to 2 general weighted average or good. Same number of respondents who have general weighted average of 1.5 to 1 or excellent. And there's only 1 respondents who have a general weighted average of 2.75 or fail.
So SOP 2.8, Preferred Learning Platforms when Answering Quizzes. In SOP 2.8 shows that most of the respondents prefer to use Google Forms as learning platforms when having quizzes, which made up of 32% of the total population. 10 respondents choose Google Classroom, 8 respondents choose Kahoot, and 7 respondents choose Facebook Messenger, and 5 respondents choose quizzes. In upholds to this, according to University of Massachusetts, Amherst, in review of related literature number 4, paragraph 7, page 22, Google Form is a free online tool from Google which allows users to create forms, surveys, and quizzes, as well as the collaboratively edit and share the forms with other people.
Next is OP 2.B, Preferred Learning Platform used when answering formative assessments. It shows that most of the respondents prefer to use Google Form when answering formative assessments, which made up of 52% of the population. 12 respondents choose Google Classroom, 5 respondents choose Facebook Messenger, 3 respondents choose Kahoot, and 1 respondent choose quizzes. In support to this, according to University of Massachusetts, Amherst, in review of related literature, number 4, paragraph 7, page 22, educators can use Google Forms to assess their students at the beginning of the class and pre-existing knowledge.
Next is the 2.C, Preferred Learning Platforms when having group activity. So, as you can see, most of the respondents preferred Facebook Messenger to use when having group activity, which composed 31%. of the total population, and 11 of them answered that they prefer Google Classroom. 2 of them answered that they prefer Google Form. So, in opposed to this, according to Geary 2015, in review of literature number 4, paragraph 6, page 22, Facebook Messenger is not like being in the classroom, but it's purposeful, interactive, and enjoyable, and exactly what is right. Strictly discussion board online courses were missing. Facebook makes an optimal virtual classroom. Facebook Messenger enables instructors to see their students, and students get to see them also, and allows to have all class communication and interaction in one place.
SOP number 2D, preferred learning platforms used when answering assignments. SOP 2.D shows that most of the respondents prefer to use Google Classroom when answering assignments, which made up of 73% of the total population. 7 respondents choose Facebook Messenger, and 5 respondents choose Google Form. It affirms the claim Google for Education's year 2020 in the review of related literature number 4, paragraph 4, page 21, through Google Classroom. Simple workflows for creating and grading assignments save time, so you can provide rich individualized feedback all in the same interface.
Next, SOP 2.E, preferred learning platforms used when answering individual activities. It shows that most of the respondents choose Google Classroom as preferred learning platform to use when having individual activities, which made up of 36% of the population. 10 respondents choose Google Form, 7 respondents choose both Facebook Messenger and Kahoot, and 4 choose quizzes. In support to this, according to TACOR, year 2020, in the review of related literature number 10, paragraph 4, page 38, Classroom is an application designed by Google that assists in creating a collaboration of teachers and students from a long distance. It helps tutors and tutees to communicate with each other, distribute, collect, and manage assignments.
Next is the problems encountered by the respondents while using learning platforms for modes of assessment. So, the problems there are server down, late submission of tasks due to poor internet connection, re-answering of exam due to data and connection loss, poor quality of downloaded files, limited data of uploads, too much gamification, no systematic repetition of lesson mastery, application bugs, shows wrong result for assessment, size of the application is too big. So for the server down, the weighted mean is 3, which means that the qualitative interpretation is sometimes. Then for number 2, which is the late submission of tasks due to poor internet connection, the weighted mean is 4, which means that respondents encountered this problem often. And number 3, re-answering of exam due to data and connection loss. So the weighted mean is 3, which means that the respondents encountered this problem sometimes. And on the poor quality of downloaded files, the weighted mean is 3, which means that the respondents encountered this problem sometimes. Same with the problem number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to 10. The weighted mean is 3, which means that the respondents encountered these problems sometimes. So the grand mean or the total grand mean is 3 and its qualitative rating is sometimes.
Next, the 4A, degree of efficacy of learning platforms in terms of accessibility. So the categories is number 1, efficacy of Google Classroom when it comes to service and upgrades. Number 2, efficacy of Google Form when it comes to service and upgrades. 3, efficacy of Facebook Messenger's features and service to its learner users. 4, efficacy of Kahoot in providing accessible quizzes in form of games. 5, efficacy of quizzes when it comes to the accessibility of the quizzes it provides in the form of games. Number 6, Google Classroom efficacy in terms of providing accessible assessment. 7, Google Forms efficacy in providing accessible assessment. Number 8, Facebook Messenger efficacy when it comes to service and upgrades. Number 9, Kahoot's efficacy when it comes to service and upgrades. Number 10, Quizzes efficacy when it comes to service and upgrades. So the mean of number 1 to number 10, which has the qualitative interpretation very effective. So the total grand mean of the degree of efficacy of learning platforms in terms of accessibility is 4. The qualitative rating is very effective.
So, the degree of efficacy of learning platforms in terms of accessibility shown in this table using weighted mean is very effective. So, the respondents rated the accessibility of 5 learning platforms, namely Google Classroom, Google Form, Facebook Messenger, Kahoot, and Quizzes 4, which means very effective.
4.B, degree of efficacy of learning platforms in terms of accuracy. Categories. Number 1, efficacy of Google Classroom when it comes to measuring the accuracy of the time frame in answering and submitting activities. Number 2, Google Forms accuracy when it comes to checking and answer of the students in their quizzes and exams. Number 3, efficacy of Facebook Messenger's accuracy as a learning platform in having formative assessments. Number 4, Kahoot's accuracy when it comes in giving scores to the students' answers on game-based quizzes. Number 5, Quizzes accuracy when it comes in giving scores to the students' answers on game-based quizzes. Number 6, efficacy of Google Form when it comes to measuring the accuracy of the time frame in answering and submitting activities. Number 7, Facebook Messenger's accuracy when it comes to checking the answers of the students in their quizzes and exams. Number 8, Google Forms accuracy as a learning platform in having summative assessments. Number 9, Quizzes accuracy when it comes to checking the answers of the students in their quizzes and exams. Number 10, Kahoot's accuracy when it comes to checking and answer of the students in their quizzes and exams. Accuracy mean, number 1 to number 3, we have 4. And number 4, we have the mean of 3. Then 5 and 6, 4, 7, 3, and 8 to 10, 4. We have the qualitative interpretation, number 1 to number 3, very effective. Number 4, effective. 5 and 6, very effective. 7, effective. And 8 to 10 is very effective. We have the total grand mean of 4, and qualitative rating is very effective.
So, this table shows that the degree of efficacy of learning platforms using the weighted mean, the respondents rated the accuracy of 5 learning platforms, namely Google Classroom, Google Form, Facebook Messenger, Kahoot, and Quizzes 4, which means that it is very effective. So, the next table shows the degree of efficacy of learning platforms in terms of credibility. So, the first category is the efficacy of Google Classroom in terms of containing believable information and assessment. Number 2, efficacy of Google Form in terms of providing realistic answer to the given assessment. Number 3, efficacy of Facebook Messenger in terms of containing believable information and assessment. 4, efficacy of Kahoot in terms of providing truthful answers and results on the respondent's assessment or student's assessment. Number 5, efficacy of quizzes in terms of providing truthful answers and results of students' assessment. 6, efficacy of quizzes in terms of containing believable information and assessment. 7, efficacy of Google Classroom in terms of providing realistic answer to the given assessment. 8, efficacy of Kahoot in terms of containing believable information and assessment. 9, efficacy of quizzes in terms of providing truthful answer and results on the student's assessment. And last, efficacy of Kahoot in terms of providing truthful answers and results on the student's assessment. So, number 2 and number 1 category have mean of 4, which means that it is very effective. Number 3, mean is 3, which is effective. And 4 to 10 have a mean of 4, which means that it is very effective. The total grand mean is 4, which means that the qualitative rating is very effective. So, the table here shows that the degree of learning platforms or the degree of the efficacy of the learning platforms in terms of credibility for the 5 learning platforms, namely Google Classroom, Google Form, Kahoot, Facebook Messenger, and Quizzes 4, which means that it is very effective.
4D of efficacy of learning platforms in terms of reliability. So the categories is number 1, efficacy of Google Classroom in terms of securing the answering of the students in the activities. 2, efficacy of Google Form in terms of detecting cheating. 3, efficacy of Facebook Messenger in terms of trustworthiness that the answer of the student will not be forwarded and shared with others. 4, efficacy of Kahoot in terms of securing the data and results of the student's assessment. 5, efficacy of quizzes in terms of securing the data and result of the student's assessment. Number 6, efficacy of Google Form in terms of securing the answering of the students in the activities. Number 7, efficacy of Google Classroom in terms of detecting cheating. Number 8, efficacy of Facebook Messenger in terms of detecting cheating. Number 9, efficacy of Google Classroom in terms of securing the data and results of the student's assessment. Number 10, efficacy of Google Form in terms of securing the data and results of the student's assessment. So, the number 1, efficacy of Google Classroom in terms of securing the answer of the students in the activities which has the mean of 4, and the qualitative interpretation is very effective. Categories 2, 3, 2 and number 3, which has the mean of 3, and the qualitative interpretation is effective. Then number 4 to 6, which the mean is 4 and the qualitative interpretation is very effective. Number 7 to 8, the mean is 3 and the qualitative interpretation is effective. 9 and 10 is the mean is 4 and the qualitative interpretation is 4. So the total grand mean of the degree of efficacy of learning platforms in terms of reliability is 4, and the qualitative rating is very effective.
So this table shows the degree of efficacy of learning platforms in terms of reliability with the use of weighted mean. So the respondents rated the reliability of the learning platforms, namely Google Classroom, Google Form, Facebook Messenger, Kahoot, and Quizzes 4, which means that it is very effective. So for SOP 5, the level of significance between the respondent's profile and degree of efficacy of learning platforms. So there is a correlation of 0, which means that it is a negligible correlation. So this figure represents the respondent's profile associated with the degree of efficacy of learning platforms. It shows that it gives a correlation or R value of 0, which means negligible correlation. This means that the correlation will be nullified or was nullified. So it validates the study of Alavi and Tuzandehani 2017 on the review of related literature number 3, paragraph 1, page 21, having a background of learning platforms of students can enhance their learning and at the same time help students strengthen self-actualization. Tevin, Michael, and Shiselman 2011 also emphasized that knowledge of the learning platforms can help facilitate teachers to employ suitable teaching strategies and methods to nurture students' academic performance. It will also provide both teachers and students positive feedback on their strength, weakness in the teaching and learning scenario.
Number 6, label significant difference between the degrees of efficacy of learning platforms. Number 6, represent label significance difference between the degrees of efficacy of learning platforms with the use of one-way ANOVA. As you can see, the p-value of 0.1119 is less than the significance level, which means the null hypothesis will be rejected. This means that there is a significant difference between the degree of efficacy of learning platforms. In support to this, according to Yasin and Ali Habi, year 2014, on review of related studies number 4, paragraph 3, page 49, e-learning is based on use of tools and technologies such as the web applications and internet platforms for improving the teaching and learning techniques and methods of e-learning platforms is composed of a set of applications and processes including web-based learning, computer-based learning, virtual classrooms, and digital collaborations. E-learning users focus on how to benefit from e-learning concerning teaching and learning purposes.
Next, number 7, correlation between problems encountered by respondents and degree of efficacy of the learning platforms. It represents the problems encountered by respondents in while using the learning platforms associated with the degree of efficacy of learning platforms. It shows that it gives a correlation or R value of 0.3832, which means low correlation. This means that there is a significant relationship between problems encountered by respondents and degree of efficacy of the learning platforms. In upholds to this, according to Dibinta et al. Year 2016, on their case study, e-learning platform in higher education, utilizing these platforms was a genuine test that changed students' discernments about schoolwork and their significance. Students end up being more open and willing to settle more unpredictable schoolwork. An e-learning stage is additionally an appropriate arrangement that helps in class the executives and keeps away from possible blunders in distinguishing proof of schoolwork's sender's genuine name, as happened many times in by means of email entries.
Number 10, summary, conclusion, and recommendation. So, summary. The descriptive survey conducted aimed to determine the efficacy of learning platforms used for modes of assessment among the third-year Bachelor of Secondary Education students of Asbury College Incorporated. Upon treating the data gathering, the following findings were made. On respondents' profile, there are more female who answered the survey than males, with 30 respondents out of 44. Majority of respondents experienced reliable internet connection strength with 16 respondents out of 44. Out of 44, there are 34 respondents who have family income of 5,000 to 9,999. Most of the respondents have a general weighted average of 1.75 or very good. On preferred learning platforms, majority of the respondents prefer to use Google Forms as learning platforms when having quizzes and formative assessment. Facebook Messenger is the preferred learning platforms of the majority of respondents when having group activities. Most of the respondents prefer to use Google Classroom when having assignments and individual activities. And most of the problems encountered by the respondents while using the learning platforms, specifically Google Classroom, Google Form, Facebook Messenger, Kahoot, and quizzes were experienced by them sometimes. From the results gathering, it clearly shows that the accessibility, accuracy, reliability, and credibility of Google Classroom, Google Form, Facebook Messenger, Kahoot, and quizzes are very effective. There is no significant relationship between the respondent's profile and the problem that they encountered while using learning platforms as mode of assessment. There is a significant difference between the degrees of efficacy of learning platforms. On the other hand, there is a significant relationship between the degrees of efficacy of learning platforms and the problem encountered by the respondents.
Conclusion. Based upon the findings presented, the researchers drawn the following and therefore concluded. Number 1. Most of the respondents were the following: A. Female. B. Have reliable internet connection strength. C. Have family income of 5,000 pesos to 9,999 pesos. D. Have a GWA of 1.75 of very good. Number 2. Respondents prefer to use the following learning platforms in modes of assessment. A. Google Form for quizzes and formative assessments. B. Facebook Messenger for group activity. And C. Google Classroom for assignments and individual activities. Number 3. respondents sometimes encounter the following problems in using the learning platforms. A. Server down. B. Re-answering of exam due to data and connection lost. C. Poor quality of downloaded file. D. Limited data of uploads. Too much gamification. E. No systematic repetition for lesson mastery. F. Application bugs. G. Learning platforms shows wrong results for assessments. H. Size of application is too big. I. Late submission of tasks due to poor internet connection. Number 4. Degree of efficacy of the learning platforms in terms of A. Accessibility to very effective. B. Accuracy to very effective. C. Credibility to very effective. D. Reliability very effective. Number 5. There is no significant relationship between the respondents' profile and the problems that they encountered while using learning platforms as modes of assessment. Number 6. There is significant difference between the degree of efficacy of the learning platforms. Number 7. There is a significant relationship between the degree of efficacy of the learning platforms and the problems encountered by the respondents.
For the recommendation, based on the conclusion of the conducted study, the following recommendations are hereby offered. So on students' profile, for A, for gender, the researchers strongly recommend the teacher should choose a gender-sensitive learning platform in each mode of assessment that students will answer. It must cater everyone to create a fair and just assessment result. B, on internet connection strength, the researchers highly recommend learning platforms that are accessible and convenient to use in a reliable internet connection or internet connection strength like Google Form, Google Classroom, and Facebook Messenger. Consider every student's internet connection strength in selecting suitable learning application for modes of assessment because some of this application requires fast internet speed for the users to access. Letter C, on family income, the researchers recommend that teachers should also select learning platforms that requires low data usage. This is to minimize the load consumption of the students because indeed, internet load are expensive. Letter D, on academic status, the researchers strongly recommend that students should spend time in mastering how to use a learning platform for different modes of assessment. We strongly believe that if the learners are knowledgeable enough in using this learning application, answering their assessment will be much easier. On preferred learning platforms used for modes of assessment, the researchers highly recommend Google Form for quizzes and formative assessment, Facebook Messenger for group activities, and Google Classroom for assignments and individual activities. On problems in learning platforms, the researchers strongly recommend that upon choosing the best learning platforms, students can use in modes of assessment or for modes of assessment, consider also the problems and malfunction of application. Choose the learning platforms or learning application with less problems and are easy to use and convenient. Students should make sure that prior to answering the assessment in using learning platforms, the internet connection must be suitable or must be stable to minimize connection problems. We, the researchers, also recommend using a device with a large storage capacity so that there will be less lags and bugs. On degree of efficacy of learning platforms, we, the researchers, highly recommend the use of learning platforms which is related and suitable for modes of assessment, considering the degree of efficacy of its accessibility, accuracy, credibility, and reliability. So that ends our virtual defense. Hope that we all answered the 10 questions properly, and thank you for watching.